she was also furious about the whole surrogacy business and all of the speculation and all of the antics surrounding that. She thought the whole thing stank to high heaven, but there was nothing, but her hands were tied, not only legally, but morally.
Developing today, new details about the late Queen's hatred of Meghan Markle and how palace insiders view the final betrayal by her grandson, Prince Harry, and Meghan Markle. Of course, the woman who has been across this story before anyone else is Lady Colin Campbell. We're going to be with her on this in just one moment. But first, I wanted to take you through some of these astonishing insider revelations. I mean, the Daily Beast and Tom Sykes, their European editor-at-large, put it this way. Insiders are just now unloading on Prince Harry's betrayal of Queen Elizabeth. This, of course, is as a result of those astonishing beyond the grave revelations by Lady Elizabeth Ansome, revealed by the royal biographer Sally Beadle-Smith on her Substack. But I'm delighted now, and actually before I get to some of these specific, really damning quotes from people who are close to the late Queen, Lady C, can we just set this up from a macro point of view? Isn't it wonderful? Okay, yes, it has taken 7 years, but isn't it wonderful that allies of the late Queen are finally feeling empowered enough and like the mainstream media has changed enough that they can start talking up the actual horror and disgust at the way that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle treated the late Queen in her dying months and years?
Yes, I think it's wonderful. And I knew Elizabeth Ansome slightly. I have to say she wasn't my favorite person. I didn't dislike her, but I didn't like her. And one of my former flatmates used to work with her. So, but there's no doubt that she was very properly connected. She was the Queen's first cousin once removed. She wasn't the Queen's first cousin, as the media keep on saying. That was her mother, Anne Boleyn, who became Princess George of Denmark and was known as Princess Anne of Denmark. But Eliza Ansome was a good friend of the Queen's. More so after Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother died, because until rarely Princess Margaret died, Princess Margaret filled that role. But her brother's wife, who was the Duke of Westminster's sister, was also a lady-in-waiting of Princess Margaret. So it was all very cozy and well connected. And she certainly knew what was going on. And I know some of the people that Sally Biddell-Smith is now quoting. For instance, Elsa Boca, whom she calls Lady Elsa Boca. She wasn't Lady Elsa Boca. She was Lady Boca. She was the wife of a knight. And Elsa, who I'd known forever because she was half Egyptian, half Lebanese, and part Lebanese. So through the Lebanese community, we'd known each other for decades. And also she was a great friend of my stepmother-in-law, Margaret, Duchess of Argyll. And Elsa has said various things as well, which she said to me. So everything that actually Sally Biddell-Smith is saying that Elsa said is absolutely accurate. One or two of them were so hot that I didn't put them in my book, The Real Diana. But where Eliza is concerned, it was she would spill the beans to Sally Biddell-Smith. Thank God she did, because otherwise I was going to a large extent be a lone voice. Now I'm not a lone voice. And when I said certain things, people said, oh, no, Lady Colin Campbell has a blah, 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 blah. And everything I always have said actually always turns out to be true. But that doesn't stop the mainstream media from trying to denigrate what I say. But now that Sally Bedell Smith is saying it through another source, who is a cousin of the late Queen and a friend of the late Queen, it's very viable. And the Queen was absolutely, as I indicated in my book, the Queen was, and remember, when I wrote the first version of my book, the Queen was still alive.
If you're enjoying what we're doing here on Outspoken, please consider joining our thriving community over on Substack, www.outspoken.live. You can sign up completely for free, but Substack is so important to me. It is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation. Plus, you get to communicate directly with me. Head on over www.outspoken.live, enter your email address, and sign up today.
And I made it absolutely clear that the Queen was outraged. I had to clean up certain things to protect the identities of people. For instance, I mentioned the Queen driving someone on the Windsor estate in the Christmas, in the run-up to the Christmas season, in the run-up to Brexit. And the Queen was vitriolic about Meghan. She thought that she was, and I can't use the words, but let me put it this way. If you like jam tarts, and if you like things about the street, and if you like, the Queen was devastatingly pejorative about Meghan as an individual and as a character. And I had to clean it up for legal reasons in my book. But the Queen saw through Meghan. The Queen was absolutely furious with Meghan. And the Queen, at that Christmas, before Meghan had actually had the unmitigated gall to say that the Queen doesn't own the word royal. And the Queen could not believe that she had given this girl, this scrubber with the most appalling reputation, that she had given her an opportunity. And she had believed that because Meghan had allowed her to believe that she wanted to join the team and work as a royal and do good as a royal. And she felt utterly betrayed that she had been manipulated the way she had by Meghan. And she also felt betrayed that Harry had been manipulated and that Harry had voluntarily jumped on the bandwagon and slit the Queen's throat.
Indeed. Lady C, how are you suggesting that the late Queen thought Meghan Markle was a bit of a tart?
Was a what?
Bit of a tart.
I don't remember how I cleaned it up in the book because I had to clean it up for legal reasons. I don't remember the right. I'd have to look at, because we had to change the wording. But yes, the Queen thought that Meghan was an operator who used her attributes and had used them very successfully where Harry was concerned and where other men were concerned as well. I mean, the Queen knew that Meghan had been around the block several times. I mean, do you remember the Queen's expression during that wedding ceremony? I mean, thunder would have been more lightweight than the Queen's expression. Yeah, she thought she knew what Meghan was, and she was privately, and I need to skirt around these issues, Jan, to protect you as well, because for legal reasons. The Queen knew exactly what Meghan was, and by the time of Brexit, she had a large part of her measure, and after Brexit, she had an even larger part of her measure. And by the time the Queen died, she knew exactly what she was dealing with. She was horrified by the Oprah interview, but she was also horrified by the total callousness that both Harry and Meghan showed in saying that they believed that the that the royal family was allowing Prince Philip to fake his obvious demise, so to keep them from broadcasting that show. I mean, can you imagine how betrayed she felt? I mean, this was a grandson that she had loved and done all, and by the way, also one of the things she also objected to, I understand, is the lies that Harry and Meghan were broadcasting through their agents, that they had unlimited and perpetual access to her, and that they would be
Yes.
phoning her up and Zooming her and the children and all the rest. It's all of that was absolutely, according to people the Queen told, totally untrue. They were simply abusing their relationship with her, and she knew it. Why do you think she absolutely refused to have any photographs of herself with that child, Lily, or any other photographs of herself with Archie? There are no photographs of the Queen. And she was also furious about the whole surrogacy business and all of the speculation and all of the antics surrounding that. She thought the whole thing stank to high heaven, but there was nothing, but her hands were tied, not only legally, but morally. Let's remember the Queen was the supreme governor of the Church of England. She was not only a queen, she also had a religious role to fulfill, and she was a devout Christian. But she, don't think for 1 second she didn't bitterly, and the word is bitterly, resent the way she and her position were being abused by Harry and Meghan.
Absolutely. Very, very, very powerfully put, Lady C. And I think the fact that there was never a picture of her with her so-called namesake is something that will haunt Prince Harry and Meghan Markle forever, because it just proves what these insiders were all telling you. Now, let me go through what these new courtiers and friends have told Tom Sykes in the Daily Beast. He's the European editor-at-large, very well-connected man. But first, these days we're living through economic whiplash, soaring prices, vanishing savings, and headlines that seem designed to confuse more than inform. We're told that this is all normal, that history is being rewritten for our own good, and that embracing these changes is the only path forward. But every outlet tells a different version of reality, and the so-called fact checkers are just enforcing the approved narrative. Luckily, there's a solution. It's Ground News. It's hands down the easiest way to stay informed. It cuts through all the bias and spin so you can actually see what's going on and make up your mind. I have it on my phone and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life, and I'd love you to check it out for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. I'm going to tell you about a huge discount in a moment. But first, I just want to show you this website and app in action. So let's take one story, but you could use any story. But we're going to take the story of Donald Trump agreeing to cut tariffs on UK auto, steel, and aluminium as part of a trade deal with Britain, one that could reshape global trade and has sparked debate on both sides of the political aisle. Now, you can see quite clearly in one place on Ground News that over 500 sources are covering the story. Ground News then instantly shows how the story is being covered by the media, broken down by whether they leave to the left or the right. This is called the bias distribution chart. Then if you scroll down, you can see every headline about the story along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. Most of the coverage is from outlets in the political centre, but here's where it gets interesting. 49% of the sources come from outlets owned by giant media conglomerates. So no wonder the narratives feel so coordinated, right? When looking at the headlines, the left covered the story with scepticism. Wired fixated on the struggling reputation of Jaguar and framed the deal as a potential way to resurrect the brand. Bloomberg chose vague language, calling it a framework, which subtly questions whether the deal is even real. But the coverage on right-leaning outlets far more confident, with GB News celebrating a major victory for UK auto manufacturers, and the New York Sun calling it a full and comprehensive trade deal that strengthens US-UK ties. Now, my favourite feature of Ground News is the blind spot feed. Every day, it will surface upwards of 20 stories that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. If you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. So go to ground.news/outspoken, or if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, just scan the QR code on screen to subscribe today. You will get 40% off the same Vantage plan I use for unlimited access. That's ground.news/outspoken for 40% off this incredible service. But now, back to the show. One source, a former courtier, told the Daily Beast, ultimately the Queen felt betrayed by Harry. And when he and Meghan attacked the institution that she spent her whole life serving in the Oprah interview, that betrayal was complete. It was absolutely shocking to those of us that knew him that he would do that, not least because her husband was on his deathbed. The former staffer told the Royalist, the allegations of racism dismayed the Queen. To accuse an unidentified person within the family of racism, thereby casting the shadow of suspicion over everyone, was unforgivable in her eyes. That was what ultimately prompted her to issue the recollections may vary statement. Things were never the same after that. It was a horrific series of betrayals at the end of her life. Another friend of the royals told the Daily Beast, you have to remember that the Queen was seriously ill for several years with bone cancer. She knew she was dying. She could hardly see. She could hardly stand. She could hardly move. And then she was completely let down by her grandson. It was utterly devastating for her. And a friend of Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, told the Daily Beast, the family, of course, all blame Meghan 100%. As Sally Beadle-Smith's column made clear, he ain't the sharpest tool in the box, and they feel he was completely manipulated and that Meghan saw him and realised she could become the most famous person in the world. Then the reality of what their boring royal life would be like sunk in, and she decided to ruthlessly milk it for all it was worth. That is their view. The friend of William and Catherine added, the family think it is a rerun of what happened with Wallis Simpson, and the only solution is to follow the same playbook. Exile worked before, and it will work again. So, Lady C, lots of fascinating things to pick up on there. But the first thing I just want to ask you about is this friend of the late Queen. And I think it was stark the way that they describe exactly how difficult it was for the late Queen in her dying days. Now, of course, we knew how much she was suffering at the time. We all wanted to respect the fact that she didn't want the public to know just how bad her cancer was, just how bad her eyesight was, just how bad her walking was. You know, she didn't want people to see her that way. But the fact that friends of the royals are now coming out and saying that was her reality paints a very, very stark picture of just how revolting what Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were putting her through really was.
Yes, well, Dan, I'm sure you know that Tom Sykes is a friend of mine.
Yes,
His
very,
father
very
is a
connected
friend
guy, isn't he?
He's very well connected. The Sykeses are one of the great aristocratic English families, and his father used to spend every weekend down here with me after he was widowed. And I know how well connected he is, and everything. And Tom is absolutely reliable and trustworthy. And everything that he is now saying, of course, is a variation of what I've been saying all along, because although I don't ask him for his sources and he doesn't ask me for mine, it is possible that if they're not crossovers, there are certainly they're all from the same world, let's put it this way, from the royal world and the aristocratic world, where people have been talking for some considerable length of time. and the Queen made her sentiments very clear to very many people. And I am delighted that it's all coming out now. But it was never going to come out before now, because notice the timing. The timing of all of this is following the Hollywood Reporter and the Vanity Fair exposés. Until certain people regarded it as safe, they were perfectly prepared to have me being a lone wolf in the wilderness with you and one or two other people saying this. But they were not prepared to back it up until they knew that the tide had turned and that Meghan and Harry were being exposed for the traitors, the treacherous, really rather cruel and nasty people that they have shown themselves to be. So let's be quite clear about why it's happening now, but it is happening, and I am delighted it's happening. And it shows that the way the poor Queen was treated was abominable, absolutely abominable. And indeed, I don't know if you remember, but I'm the person who actually made the announcement of the Queen's death.
Yes.
I did it at 4:00, and Buckingham Palace then they were supposed to do it at 6:00, and they did it at 6:32, if I remember correctly. It might have been 6:31 because of shilly-shallying with Harry. But I was approached, and then I had the dilemma, and I checked with various, shall we say, people, and there was a great concern that Meghan was going to exploit the situation and come out with one of her nonsensical but very damaging and destructive announcements, like, oh, poor me, what hair left I've been abandoned and left here alone because I'm a proud, confident woman of colour and star of suits, and they don't want me because I've got black blood, and I'm not allowed to be at Granny's bedside, and everybody knows that I was Granny's favourite granddaughter and granddaughter-in-law. And to prevent her from doing that, it was recommended to me that I announce it. So once I had announced the Queen's death, Meghan was not going to be able to say, and look, and I've had to, and so we blocked her beautifully.
Absolutely fascinating, and what history. Now, Lady C.
But you know, Dan, may I say
please,
that
please.
It shows to what extent the poor royal family and the royal establishment have been hemmed in by Meghan Markle's malice.
Yes.
And her resourcefulness and her imaginativeness and her total lack of scruple, that this woman will do anything to grab column inches for herself, and has done anything. Yep. You know, can you imagine the enormity of encouraging a beloved grandson to accuse his dying grandfather of faking an illness resulting in his death, so that Meghan wasn't able to lie and say that the royal family was racist and they were depriving Archie of a title because he had some black blood in him, when indeed his title was once he was declared legitimate, he had a title from the word go, which was Earl of Dumbarton. And you know, if you actually stop and think about the things Meghan Markle has said, and the lies she has told, and the lies she has got away with, and how the mainstream media just swallowed it whole because they thought, oh, well, we're going to run with this, whether we accept it as fact or not. I mean, the whole thing has been a scandal, not only in terms of Meghan Markle's destructive behavior, but in terms of the remiss and negligent behavior until recently of the mainstream media.
100%. 100%. And actually, Lady C, I did want to ask you about that in regards to the Prince Andrew story, because finally we get word this week that the FBI investigation is going nowhere. This is how the mainstream media in the UK pitched it. So they're still very much in an anti-Andrew point of view. Well, I spoke to a source very close to Andrew and Sarah Ferguson at the weekend, who actually are just so angry now, Lady C, because they feel like his life has been ruined, not just by the false allegations, but because of the fact that the mainstream media continue to peddle a false narrative. Your thoughts?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think I know who you were speaking to, but I'm not going to mention the name. But
Thank you.
yeah, but the fact of the matter is the way the mainstream media have dealt with the Andrew business is a total disgrace. And they know it's a disgrace. And their misconduct is totally unjustifiable. A reputable journalist does not lie or traduce people unfairly. And they have gone with the fairy on the top of the Christmas tree and everybody else needs to be traduced. And Andrew is their whipping boy. And the whole thing is totally unfair. And it's incumbent on the mainstream media to actually be fair where he's concerned. The late Queen was absolutely distraught at the way Andrew was being treated, and this is such a this we could speak about this for 3 hours, so I'm going to cut it short and say that the fact of the matter is that if there was no list, why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison?
Yeah,
right?
A British woman is the only criminal connected to Epstein, Lady C. Yeah.
The only 2 people who have suffered any consequences have been Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, I don't think I know Ghislaine Maxwell. I say that because her mother used to live upstairs from me when we all lived in Lochmoor House. And I used to see her, her mother, who was a lovely woman, at Hetty Simpson's parties with various of the children. The truth is, I don't remember which ones I met and which ones I didn't. But I know many people who know Ghislaine very well. And Ghislaine Maxwell has no business being in prison. She is a scapegoat, and she has been scapegoated. And Virginia Giuffre was a prostitute who got a lot of money, and saying that she was trafficked. Excuse me, her father used to drop her to the airport for her to catch a plane to come to England or link up with Jeffrey Epstein. Where is the responsibility? I mean, she was 17 years old when she met Epstein. She wasn't underage. She was 17 years old. And the way the British press have carried on about this is an absolute outrage. And I just am so appalled that poor Prince Andrew, who incidentally, I've met him. I don't really know him. I've met him a few times. I wouldn't even say I particularly like him. I don't dislike him either, but I don't like him. So I'm not defending him because I like him. we're not friends. Sarah is, I used to like rather more than I do now. Let's put it that way. But again, I have nothing against either of them. And Sarah, I think, has made regrettable errors of judgment and taste over the years. But she is good-hearted, so let's cut her some slack there. But Andrew has not made any of those errors. I mean, the fact that he has loyally stood by a bit of a disaster of an ex-wife should be commendable. It shouldn't be something for him to be traduced with. And the fact that he has a bit of an abrasive manner, that doesn't denigrate all the good that he did. And I hate bullies ganging up against anybody. You know, when I was growing up, I was bullied relentlessly. And I hate seeing people ganging up and bullying someone. And why is Andrew being bullied like this? Because the mainstream media think it sells papers and it gets them money. That's why they're doing it. They are totally disgraceful.
Very well put, Lady C. And it is worth just mentioning, by the way, that if you do want coverage of these important royal stories that you will never get from the mainstream media, subscribe to Lady Colin Campbell on YouTube and my Substack, www.outspoken.live. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.